Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Well, this sounds like it'd be really a dry topic. And I looked at the slides that Toastmasters provides for this particular speech and said, indeed, this does look like a dry topic. I'm going to use the slides eventually anyway, but you're going to have to put up with my prattling on about the whole subject anyhow. I think all of us have situations in life where we wish that we had more time. And that if we had more time, how are we going to get more time? And only if we had other people that could do all the things that we have to do. And simple enough, okay? We'll just delegate whatever it is we're doing to somebody else. And I'm going to leave this slide up here for a long time, so you can take your time reading it. You have at least 5 minutes to read that slide. So I think it's pretty simple. I really don't need to give a 15-minute speech. I could probably do it in 15 seconds and get the point across. Delegate power, you get better and solve problems, and et cetera, et cetera. It's right there on the screen. That's all I really need to say, and that's what you need to leave the room with, really. But I wouldn't have any fun up here just doing a 15-minute speech, 15-second speech rather. So we'll move on. And the first question I have is, if that's all there is to it, why is delegation so hard? Does anybody think it's hard? Anybody have a hard time delegating things? Almost everybody in the room, okay, at one time or another. And I suggest that perhaps the reason for this is cultural in the way we think and the way we grow up and the way we mature as we become professionals or whatever it is we're going to do in adult life. For you Navy folks, let's think of it this way. If you were, Jackson, for example, when he first joined the Navy, he was probably at the low end of the totem pole there, and they sent him to boot camp, and then when he got to his first station, which was a ship, perhaps the first thing they gave him to do was to clean the toilets. Okay, junior person can clean the toilets. Now you can take this a couple of ways. You can say, I'm not going to clean toilets, or I'm just going to do the bare minimum just to get by until they get me doing something else. Or you could say, I'm going to be the best toilet cleaner that there is. And I'm going to get really good at this. And sure enough, let's take a person that wants to get really good at cleaning the toilets, and everybody thinks, hey, give it to John, he cleans the toilets really, really well. So you get pretty proud about this after a while, okay? Well, as you move up in rank, eventually, you're not expected to clean the toilets anymore, because you have other people that are now below you that you can assign to do that. And it's your first chance, really, to delegate. But what's your first thought? Are you going to give it to that new person? I'm so good at cleaning the toilets, that person, no way that person can clean the toilet as well as I can. So I'm going to keep doing it. Probably not a good idea. All right, now this is a silly example, all right? But the principle is the same no matter what the career path is. I'm a meteorologist, most of you know that, which means I forecast the weather, at least I try, or used to before I retired. And as I moved up through the ranks, I got really good at forecasting, all right? And eventually it got to the point where if someone else is doing the forecast, when I was on TV a few years ago, I had the same problem. The person that followed me, I didn't think was as good at putting the forecast down, so I changed his forecast when I came into my shift because I knew I could do a better forecast. Now technically I couldn't delegate anything to him because it was a watch, it was on watch, and he didn't report to me. But the problem was there. And throughout my career, even before that, the problem was there. When I went to the Enterprise, I was on the USS Enterprise for 3 years. I was the ship's meteorologist and oceanographer and a few other things. And the ship in particular, the CEO of the ship, he wanted a specialist to be specialists. So what did I do? I was involved with every single forecast. I made sure that it was the way I wanted it to be, so that when I went up and briefed the captain, I knew that he was getting the best that my group could produce. Well, what did I do by doing that? Well, instead of delegating it to perhaps someone else that had gotten some education in the field, maybe he wasn't as good as I was at forecasting, but maybe I'm doing all the work and these guys are sitting around smoking cigarettes or feet up on the table or whatever, because I wasn't a very good delegator. Now on a ship, and I know Jackson can verify this, if you screw up, you could cost somebody their life. The ship is not a place to slack off. You know, just differences in millimeters sometimes, in an aircraft carrier in particular. Precision, if you don't have precision, you can lose an airplane, and maybe some people at the same time. So I always wanted to be the best that there was. Now, as I think of other people in the Navy that I was associated with, and I remember a commanding officer, fortunately I never had to work for him, but he was very a detail-oriented person. He knew his meteorology, and at one point he got assigned as the commanding officer of what was then Fleet Weather Central Guam, out in Marianas in the Western Pacific. One of the functions of Fleet Weather Central Guam was to forecast typhoons. And so there was a joint agency there of Air Force and Navy people to do the forecasting. So this particular captain was assigned as the commanding officer, and he went out what we call unaccompanied, which meant your family stayed home. And he was bored. So he'd come in at 5 o'clock in the morning, start looking at the charts, talking to the forecasters. Don't you think this typhoon ought to be going this way? And he drove people crazy. Nobody liked him. Eventually, somebody else replaced him, and it was like, wow, breath of fresh air, that guy's finally gone. Why? Because he didn't know how to delegate, or he didn't delegate as perhaps he should have. And this goes right on up to the top, really, because even presidents of the United States have the same problem. Lyndon Baines Johnson, I grew up during the Vietnam War era, famously said, "There can't even bomb an outhouse over there without my approval." Can you imagine? The President of the United States making the decision, not only are what the Air Force or the Navy going to bomb in Vietnam, but whether or not they can bomb an outhouse. That seems just a little bit overbearing in my mind. But he actually said that. Then we move on, and other presidents, Jimmy Carter, for example, he was a technician. He was a nuke. For those that are not Navy people, a nuke is someone who was an expert in nuclear power, and I guess, and it was just mentioned in the last speech, actually. And so he was a very detailed person, and because he was a very detailed person, he had to be involved with all the decisions that were made that perhaps should have been made 3 or 4 layers below him. And we all know how that presidency turned out. And the next guy that came along was just the opposite. Not only was he a delegator, but his idea was, I'll do the vision, you guys make it work. And it got him into trouble a couple of times, because he didn't know what was happening, and he ended up in situations that perhaps wouldn't have happened if he had paid more attention to what was going on. So you have both extremes here, and you have to kind of build a happy medium. All right, so how does this apply, say, to Toastmasters? Well, okay, we're all in here. Somebody's got to run the club, right? We have the president. She's delightful, she really is. We've had a lot of other presidents that have been very good. But we have a set of officers. We have a set of officers that actually run the club, because one person cannot do the whole thing. Now, the next thing that comes up here is barriers to delegation. Why would not a club president delegate things? Why did Jimmy Carter not delegate certain things? Why did I not delegate certain things? Well, lack of confidence perhaps in the people who were going to do the job, because I didn't think that person could do the same forecast that I could, so I was going to do it no matter what. Lack of confidence in those people. Lack of control. I've been in charge of this all my life. I'm not going to give up the control. It's my baby. I'm going to do it. That's a problem. Selfishness? Well, I suppose. You know, you think you're good at it, and you're selfish, you want to do it, so same kind of thing. Insecurity? It's not that I'm insecure, but maybe I'm not comfortable with the people that are going to have to do the job. I'm not really confident they can do it. Or maybe I'm just afraid to ask. So these kinds of things are what can get in the way of delegating. And in a Toastmasters club, it happens all the time. People are afraid to ask, can you help them with this? You know, we see people, we have a situation today, we elected a new vice president of membership. Do you think he raised his hand and said, I want to be vice president of membership? No, we went and buttonholed him and convinced him that only he could pull this off. And I know that he will. And so he finally said, yes, I'll do it, okay? So we got past the reluctance of asking somebody, we need help, can you help us out? If we all work together, none of us have to do too much by ourselves. Okay? All right. Now, when we get into the five steps of delegations, let's talk about how this goes with the Toastmasters Club. I'm just going to bring some of these things up here. All right, you've got an officer cadre, and really what you need to do in the case of Toastmasters is every 6 months there's a nominating committee that decides who is willing to run for office for the subsequent 6 months. And in the subsequent 6 months, the nominating committee chooses people based on these principles. Well, who do we know? Who in the club knows enough about the club to do this job, all right? Who is motivated enough to do this job? Maybe Tatiana years ago wasn't motivated initially to get into an officer role. Now we can't keep her out. That's good. Was she motivated? Not at the time, but we knew she was knowledgeable, and she always tells a story about how I twisted her arms to do a particular role. I don't really remember that. But at any rate, it didn't stop after that. She moved on up through the ranks. She became an area director and then division director, and if she had the time, she probably would have gone all the way up through the district, because we knew she was able. And everybody that knows Tatiana knows how able she is when it comes to the educational part of the Toastmasters. So that's important. Find the right people to do the right job, really. I mean, you can delegate to somebody, you can delegate putting out a weather forecast to the lowest guy who just came aboard the ship, but that's not going to do it because that person's really not able, not qualified for that particular issue. So, eventually, we got new officers and Toastmasters, and we tell them, this is what your job is. We assign certain responsibilities to you. The Sergeant at Arms, by the way, was here today. He had another place he had to go, but he had the room all set up. The sign was downstairs. He was in the room, and I was the second person in the room. So he did his job. Got that responsibility. Told him what he needed to do. We have officer training. We send our officers to officer training. This is what you need to do when you're Sergeant at Arms. As a sergeant, we can't do it all. There have been times in there where there's 2 or 3 of us putting out the signs and putting the ballots out. It's pretty hectic. But if we have one person doing that, then the rest of us can focus on other things. And so we move through the treasurer, secretary, vice presidents, and public relations, membership, education, pathways, and so forth, and the president. Now, the president's job, she has an easy job, okay? Her job, basically, is to empower, grant authority, if you will. Say, this is what your job is, and her job is to make sure they do their job. Because if she's out changing the schedule, in easy speak, or trying to do the secretary minutes, she's going to be overwhelmed in a hurry. Instead, she can just walk through the door at the last minute, come up here and take over the meeting, and we're in good shape. And that's good, and that's the way it should work. Okay? So, bottom line here is accountability. The 3 parts of giving somebody a job to do, first of all, is give them responsibility, give them the authority to carry it out, and then hold them accountable. And that's what I try to do when I'm in a leadership role in Toastmasters, as I am in another club right now. This is kind of the principle that I try to go by. So overall, obviously, if you delegate, you have these cheesy bullets here that basically tell you what. But basically, things are going to work a lot better, okay? So we're going to wrap up the whole idea. I love this quote here. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. General Patton, many years ago. So, bottom line is delegate to empower. You're going to get the job done. Things are going to go better. We have a good club here because we most of the time know how to do it well within the club. Delegating to the other officers and then holding them accountable. I mean, there have been presidents here that if the secretary minutes weren't filed, I'd get the question, what did you do with the secretary minutes from last week? Well, all right, I forgot to file them. So anyway, accountability. So I hope you all learn a little bit about this, and then if you have delegation problems, kind of take this to heart. And remember, there's always somebody that can do the job as well as you. Just let them have the chance. Have a chance.